Sheldon, another wonderful week of Champs versus Stars. Another wonderful week here in the city of Toronto. Springtime is finally here. Finally here. It's been a rough winter.
It's true.
How are you doing this
It's
morning?
good, get to bring out all the fresh kicks. The sun is shining. Not worried about ice storms anymore. Good to go.
Yes. No more ice storms. Hopefully no more windstorms.
True.
I'm John Chidley Hill.
Yeah, I forgot about the windstorm, actually. Knocked off a bunch of shingles off my roof. Had to fix my roof like last week. Yeah. Sorry, I am Sheldon Alexander.
I was going to be like, Sheldon, say who you are. This is You Killed It, the podcast about the
So
challenge.
it's not a podcast about roofing, no? Or weather? Okay.
No. Roofing podcast, that's going to be our next podcast project, because you and I don't have enough on our plate.
Deal.
We're gonna start this episode, though, of You Killed It with, believe it or not, listener complaints.
Yeah. I like it.
Because we're service-oriented. First of all, Mitchell Martin sent me a message, commented that I should stop typing when we are speaking, which is fair, because sometimes I do that, because I look stuff up, and I try to edit it out. But last week, I was in a rush, because this is a busy season, and so I did, frankly, a half-assed job of editing, so I didn't cut any of that out. Like, I just lined up our cues and off we went.
I say boo-hoo
and so my
to
apologies.
that. I say boo-hoo to that.
Well, I don't want to distract anyone. But at the same time, Mitch had very nice things to say about the podcast, so I'm not that mad, but I'm sorry, Mitch. I'll try to do better. The other complaint is from one Wes Bergman, who perhaps you've heard of him.
I think I might be familiar with him, yes.
He says that this is last week's episode of You Killed It was the first episode he did not like. Of You Killed It. I think he was just pulling our leg. He's still team YKI. But I thought that I would just read out to you what he had to say.
Okay.
His first issue was that we were both confused as to why he had not voted to put Tori in.
Okay. I'm interested to hear this.
Or to make her MVP, I should say. He said, even if I had voted for Tori, and all the champs did, we would have lost by 1. So I threw away my vote so Louise could win, and then pay me back later. If I could have tied it, I would have, but it was mathematically impossible. And then he added, but most importantly, you definitely didn't give enough credit for me beating an Olympian at her sport. And you know what? I have to say, listening back, I do see Wes's point. We did not give him enough credit for beating Louise Hazel, because he legit beat her.
Didn't we talk about the Uncle Phil hustle? Didn't we talk about that? No?
Yeah, we did. That he kind of played rope-a-dope and he hustled her. But he still wants credit, which is fair. I get it.
Okay.
And I do see his point about the voting, and I really appreciate him reaching out to give us that extra little insight, because we're not in the room, and I always appreciate getting to understand things better. And there's in the past, he and Marie and Sylvia and Jemmy and Emily have all been really nice about giving us extra insight. And there's information. I'm often surprised with how often there's information that doesn't get that gets edited out of the show. It wasn't the case here, but I always appreciate that extra insight, because there's usually more going on.
I'm going to make a heel turn here.
No.
And I'm going to go the opposite way. And I'm going to say boo-hoo to Mitch and boo-hoo to Wes. And I'm only half joking, because obviously we appreciate the feedback. We appreciate any and all comments that people want to give us here. But you know what, Wes? You did win. You beat Louise at hurdles. It's cool. But I'm Team Louise. I'm sorry. I just have to be Team Louise here. So, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. It's how I feel.
Wow. I am agog. I mean, all those people on Reddit are going to be so mad that you're switching over because, we've been accused of being too biased in favor of Wes. And now here you are turning your back on him. On our redheaded god. What are you doing?
I don't know. Louise is just mesmerizing. I'm sorry. I just can't say a bad thing about Louise. Wes, you should have just let her win. I don't know. I'm just Team Louise. I'm sorry. That's how I feel. It's just how I feel. I can't change it.
Well, let's talk about this episode because, this week's episode, because both Louise and Wes figure in pretty prominently.
Yeah, I mean, this episode was kind of interesting because it's all gameplay, it's all strategizing going on here, a lot of strategy. I started off this episode, though, John, to be honest, kind of annoyed because I'm like, I don't get why Ashley is that frustrated. I really don't get it.
I didn't get it either.
It's super weird to me. It's way over the top. Is it really that big of a deal that you had to switch teams? I don't get it. I thought it was just way over the top, way too much. And it was the first time in a while that I felt that Casper's trolling. I actually laughed. It made me laugh. When she's at the bar crying and most people are trying to console her and Casper just comes over and just starts trolling. I thought that was actually kind of funny. And it was the first time where I didn't really find Casper that annoying because I just thought Ashley maybe was being more annoying. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yes. I agree with you. And furthermore, I don't understand why Ashley was so upset, but also I don't understand why she stayed in the bar, right? They had their little meeting. She flipped out. They clearly, wherever they're filming, is clearly in some sort of lounge or conference room at the hotel they're all staying at in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And, they can just walk to, the restaurant bar area, which is why I think so many of the conversations about voting happen in the same area. They're clearly just talking about it before they go in to see The Miz.
For sure.
And if I was upset as she was, I would have gone to my room. Right? You're in the building. I would have gone to my room. It's the same issue I had last week with Brooke Hogan being on the phone with her dad. If you're making a private phone call, why wouldn't you do it in your hotel room? This isn't a normal challenge. You do have the option of privacy. And
no, everything's for the show, John. Everything's for the show. I'm gonna put my producering hat on here. And no. We want to make sure that everything has a chance to be content. We don't want to pass up the opportunity for any content. So we're gonna make you mill around before and after, where we have access to you and what the situation is. So the way that it's set up too, and I'm half joking there, right? But in all seriousness, what would normally happen is they would know that your shoot time is from this time to this time, and basically you have to be available at that time to be on camera, right? So if your shoot day is going on and these are the times, you might not be able to go to your room at that time, or you might not be able to step out into an area where they're not filming at the time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but this point...
It's all about the content.
Yeah, but at this point when she was in the restaurant, I don't know. And maybe it's the personalities at play, too. But, I know that I would excuse myself in some way. Just half an hour to not even 5 minutes to splash some water on your face and compose yourself.
We're also leaving out an important factor here, though, right?
What's that?
She could just be playing this up for the camera.
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
Right? As making it a storyline, right? And she wants it to be on camera. That could also be a huge factor here that we're not really talking about, right?
That's sort of what I'm driving at, is that I mean, I think she was legitimately upset, but I think the fact that there's cameras around pushed it even further. Because when people on the show are legitimately upset, the move usually is to go away in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Salida, when she got upset with Kayla, she left. I mean, she didn't go far, and like the camera still found her, but she did like pull herself out of the situation. So I don't know. I agree with you. I don't understand what Ashley's so upset about, especially because spoiler alert for later in this episode, Red Team's advantage in terms of champs doesn't last long. So it's not like either team is especially safe.
True, true, true.
Right?
Very true.
So
yeah, I mean, Ashley freaking out. Maybe she should have just went salsa dancing with the rest of the crew.
yeah.
That would have made her feel better, I think. No?
Yeah.
We don't get the club scene, and you know me, I'm here for the club scene. But we got close. I'll take the salsa dancing scene.
yeah.
I'll take that.
Some of those ladies were looking great.
Yes, I will totally agree with that, and I feel like Tony would also agree with that. As Tony was, it was funny here, right? Because obviously we get this scene where they're I guess they're doing salsa dancing lessons, and like obviously Casper is a dancer, so like he's just dominating things, but at the same time, Tony is just having fun. Tony's in his element because he is just flirting with Lil Mama. He's flirting with Brooke. Tony's just, doing his Tony thing. But not to skip too far ahead here, great producering again, because we allowed Tony to be Tony, and then in the next season, or not the next season, next scene, pardon me, give him a chance to sit down and discuss his actual relationship, right? And ring shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Great producering there by MTV, right? Because you know that you're worried about Tony not being Tony, right? Tony, the toned down version of Tony that we've gotten, right? Because he's gotten himself in a lot of trouble on these shows, right?
Yes.
So you might be worried that he might be tamed. He might hesitate a little. But no, you want Tony to be salsa dancing. You want his hand to, while he's dancing with Brooke, that hand might slide to the lower back, and obviously Brooke doesn't seem to be too upset about it, asking if he's staring at her ass or her butt. Sorry, I don't think she swore.
No.
But you know what I mean? I think you want that Tony there. So I like the balance, the counter of what they did there. What'd you make of this little salsa scene?
I mean, it was fun for us. I do wonder what his baby mamas think of this. Right? Like, if he obviously has had a problem with faithfulness, you can't, like, it wouldn't be encouraging to see him flirting like that. And like you're talking about how his hand was kind of roving with Brooke Hogan, but Lil Mama was like straddling him.
Yep.
And then
Lil Mama was straddling him, and then his head at one point was like nestled pretty nicely on Brooke's chest.
Yeah.
I mean, Tony, I would love to see like what we didn't see, right? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know what he was like whispering into Lil Mama's ear while she was basically had her legs wrapped around his waist. Like, yeah, that's kind of what I want to know here.
Yeah, and I mean, what's her name? Elisa? What's his potentially fiance's name?
I think so. Alyssa, maybe?
You're right. I can't imagine Alyssa was watching that and happy that, like, in the same breath that he's talking about how good and wonderful, in the same breath that he's talking about how good and wonderful she has been to him, that he's also been basically hitting on Lil Mama and Salida. And then being like, oh yeah, like if you were single, like it's on. Like that's not gonna fly. Like,
But I think that was the beauty of how it was placed together. I bet you there were some backroom deals made by the producers where it was like, "Hey Tony, we're gonna air this stuff of you flirting, but we'll what if we give you a chance to talk about your family? Like, are you gonna get married? Maybe you can talk to Lil Mama and Salida about what kind of ring you're gonna get. Like he can play both sides. He had a nice little." Scene where it looked like iPhone footage where he was showing Elisa and his daughter. I think that was just a negotiation, right, John? That's what it is. We need Tony to be Tony. We need more actual Tony time, right? So hey, sometimes you gotta.
I hear you. Like, it's good for the viewers. I worry about Tony's personal life. Things I never thought I'd say.
Maybe she's just happy that Tony is making some money for the family. Tony is talking about getting married. He is turning down all these other lovely, gorgeous, beautiful women. And he is focused on, his future with his family. I'm about the positives here, John. I'm about the positives. He's just talking. They're just dancing. No harm in that.
Yeah, I mean...
Talking, dancing, maybe at most flirting, but hey, you can just say, I'm doing it for TV. I'm doing it for the show.
I mean...
Right?
You're not wrong. It's, he's still playing a dangerous game, but, and it's a game that he should probably retire from. But, I mean, it still makes for good TV.
It does. It definitely does. It was way better TV than the Jose and Devin scene in the hot tub.
Yep.
That was a little much for me. I was just like, is this really necessary? Like, they could have been at the bar. They could have maybe been at the salsa dance scene. I don't know. I just found it really a weird scene where these two guys are in the hot tub discussing gameplay, and it really was our first introduction, I think, fully into the Jose that I've been telling you guys about.
Yeah,
for the whole season.
I was thinking that because I think after the first episode of this season, you said, because you're more into Big Brother than I am, that Jose, in a word, sucks.
Yes.
And I really saw that as I was watching it. I was like, man, Sheldon's right. This guy's lame. Like,
he is a terrible his social game might be the absolute worst. And I don't know, like, maybe in real life, confidence can get you pretty far, right? Before people realize that it might be BS. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Overconfidence might get you pretty far before someone realizes that it's BS, and then you get knocked back down a couple pegs, right?
Yeah.
Jose is like the epitome of overconfidence. Like, however the view that other people see of him is nowhere near what he sees of himself, right? So even within this game, he hasn't done anything, right? He has really no alliances that you can tell other than the basic, hey, I'm one of the stars on the red team. But you're trying to go to Devin to make a deal when you're in no way, shape, or form in a place to negotiate. Like, you have absolutely nothing to offer. And, I mean, mind you, Devin plays along and blatantly just lies to him. But still, it's just a weird situation for sure. And we got a glimpse into, because I was saying, he is the worst. This is a guy who, on his season of Big Brother, thought that he was the head of an alliance that had like maybe 12 people, and there's only 16 people in the house. And so, like, right away, and then he started calling himself the Messiah of the house. Yeah, called himself the Messiah, and that he was running the game, and then got voted out the very next week. So he is entertaining, but in the most, like, cringe-worthy way.
I don't know if I've told you this, but the rumors are, according to Vevmo, which is pretty good, spoilers, that he is on the next season of The Challenge.
It will be very entertaining if that's the case. Like, as annoying as I find him, don't get me wrong, he will be entertaining. Because either people will just be crushing him, or, like, he'll just be a pawn in someone else's game but not really realize it. He will be entertaining, though. He will be entertaining.
Well, I loved Devin's assessment where Jose was like, yeah, I think that like I can flip Devin, and like he seems like a really like one of those players that's like really wavering, which is hilarious because it's a total misread of Devin.
Yeah,
And
like he didn't realize how much he was getting played. Exactly.
well, I wouldn't even say that Devin was playing with him. I think Devin was just like, okay, I'll hear you out, and just like let him talk. I loved that the then like cut to Devin, who was immediately like, "Yeah, not gonna happen. Like, no way. There's no way that I will participate in this chicanery. Like, forget that."
Yeah.
And then Tony showed up. Like Tony was just like, oh, I'll walk by the hot tub late at night, see what's happening. Which now that
Do you think that was a surprise that Tony was looking for with his late night stroll by the hot tub?
No, I think he was hoping to find Lil Mama and Salida in there.
Right? Right? Yeah, so I mean, hey, Jose's trying to do something. It's probably not going to work, but he's not the other one. He's not the only one, pardon me, trying to work an angle. We also got Wes trying to figure out just what his angle's going to be, because if the blue team loses, he's probably going in, and we end up playing this game, jumbo table hockey, which was kind of a throwback to, was it last season of Champs versus Stars, where they had the jumbo, was it foosball?
Yep, jumbo foosball.
I'm here for these games. They on paper seem a lot more fun than I think from a viewing experience after watching the challenge. Like the payoff isn't there, but I think like on paper or maybe actually participating in it and playing in it would be a lot of fun. But watching it did not seem that good at all. It seemed like it was kind of boring. It seemed like they were trying really hard to edit it to make it seem like it was somewhat exciting. And if not for Shane just like screaming at Jose, which was completely annoying and completely terrible, did anything else really happen? You know what I mean? Like not much else was really going on. Ashley was trying to throw it.
Yeah.
Which I want to get your take on that. What do you make of Ashley's whole I'm going to try to throw the challenge, and then how the team handled it in terms of, only playing her in the one period and placing her in a place where they thought she might not hurt them?
Well, that's exactly my criticism of Ashley. It's one thing to throw it. It's another thing to tell everyone that you're going to throw it, so they put you in a position where you cannot throw it. Like, it's a good plan to throw it and to be spiteful, especially in a male elimination week. Like, there's nothing they can do about it. But she told everyone she was going to do it. She was making jokes with Brooke about it. She announced it when she switched teams. So they were able to, like, compensate.
Do you think she actually would have thrown it? Like, do you think if they put her playing defense, let's say, that she would have tried to score on her own net? Do you think she actually would have followed through on it, or was she just talking tough?
I think she would have tried, but not succeeded. Because as the game unfolded, it's clear that most of them don't have a background in hockey. And also, in fairness, like, it wasn't like a standard, like, road hockey ball or puck that they were playing with. It was a very bouncy ball, and they were very limited because their sticks were on these poles that were confined, I guess is the word, to a track. They were stuck to a track. So it'd be hard for her to throw the game. And what it basically came down to was the skill level of your goalie. And I think both teams were smart in having their physically largest players in CT and Booby in net, just because they take up the most space. And Booby obviously has like world-class hand-eye coordination. So
yes,
it basically just came down to a goalie duel, which does not make for exciting television. Even if it was an NHL game, a 1-0 win is not super exciting.
Facts. I mean, to me, anyways, I totally agree with you. I'm sure there's some hockey nerd out there that's like angry and like, what are you talking about? Defense wins championships. But I will agree with you here, John. Yeah, Booby was making big time saves. CT was doing all right. But yeah, it made for a pretty like boring challenge from a viewer standpoint. And Shane, I just didn't get it. I know why they were yelling at Jose, like in theory, but I didn't see anything that was that bad in terms of what Jose was doing to warrant anything near to the level of yelling that Shane was providing during this challenge. Like, that was just super weird to me.
Yeah, it
also,
was pretty
I
over
have
the
a
top.
theory here.
Oh, lay it on me.
Oh, it was so... First off, you're right. It was so over the top, and I didn't understand. Like, was he just going over the top to try to throw Jose under the bus? Possibly?
I think Shane has a short temper in general, and I think that maybe what we were seeing was an accumulation of frustration over the span of like 6 or 7 days, right? Like, I think Jose, like, there's a brief scene where Devin and Wes are talking, and Devin says, man, Jose's just the worst. And we haven't, as viewers, we haven't seen how bad Jose is.
Yeah.
But...
Oh, but I can imagine.
But yeah.
I can imagine.
So I think that when Shane was screaming at him, that was days of frustration of Jose just not listening and being bad and being annoying. Still an overreaction, like, not excusing Shane's over-the-top screaming, but still, like, I think there's a reason for it.
So I have a theory here, and my theory is, did CT throw this? Because it came all the way down to the very end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Tony shoots a backhand from a bad angle, and it gets through CT. I'm not even saying past him, because I'm going to say it got through CT. I'm just questioning, did he throw it just so that this game would end and someone would win? Just because no matter what, you know, their team losing doesn't really affect him. If anything, it gives him a chance to get rid of Jose, who, as you said, might be a problem behind the scenes. But again, I feel like if you just watch that play again, I felt like CT might have, like, a buzzer beater in hockey, in this kind of hockey. Come on, it just seems a little much. It just seemed odd to me. I'll say that much. I'd like to think that CT is a better goalie than letting in that terrible goal at the very end of the game.
I mean, you might be right. It had not occurred to me when I was watching it, but now, like, I see what you're saying, and I'll make the point that I think of the champs, he's probably safest. Like, I think that...
Well, definitely. We found that out at the end of this episode, no?
Yes. But, I mean, just in general, I think the Stars like him because he's so low-key. And, you know, he's very good at these challenges. And although he's firmly in the champs camp, he hasn't been, like, a dick about it. He's not trying to wheel and deal. He's not, like, exploding and screaming at them. He's certainly involved in the machinations of the champs to get rid of the Stars, but he's not sticking his neck out that bad, so he's not stepping on any toes. So, you know, you might have a point, and CT's smart enough to know that. Like, he's smart enough to get a read of a situation. I think Devin was the same way. Like, I don't think Devin's annoyed or pissed off anyone, and, you know, he's firmly team champs, but he's not really making his allegiance brutally obvious.
For sure. One thing I think they should have done with the rules that might have increased scoring was they should have made the goalies hold on to the stick.
Yes, I noticed that
because
too.
I felt like Booby had a massive advantage while he was making saves, that he wasn't holding onto the stick. So it gave him more of a range of motion, which obviously the players that are shooting don't have, because they're, do you know what I mean? Like, they're using these sticks that are attached, which makes for the awkwardness of the game. And it probably would have made for the awkwardness of goaltending if you had to hold on to your stick normally.
Yeah.
But hey, I'd like to play this game. I wish this was like something that we could rent, or like, you know, I have this idea that, well, actually, I probably shouldn't say this on the air because I still want to do this at some point. So never mind.
All right.
I'll stop myself.
No
freebies. No freebies.
It'll remain a teaser.
But yeah, so let's move on. So as we said, Tony scored the only goal, which leads to basically the ceremonies where the deliberations with both teams trying to decide, the blue team trying to decide who their MVP should be, and the red team trying to decide who their LVP should be. And the LVP for the red team is pretty obvious because it's Jose, and he made a pretty terrible defense of himself in their meeting that they had. It was pretty easy that he was going in. Mm-hmm. But the blue team was kind of interesting, right? Because which way do you go? They tried to make it seem like, oh, well, Tony scored, but Booby made all the saves. And they tried to make it seem as if they were talking about, like, who, if we're being fair, should it be? When really it just came down to the votes, no?
Yeah, you're right. It just came down to the votes. And also, I honestly, like, I'm cheering for the champs. I'd rather the champs win. I am more invested in their success. Mm-hmm.
You don't want to see Drake Bell win?
No, I don't. Although I like Drake. He's grown on me.
Yeah. He's getting more comfortable during the season, for sure.
But based purely on performance, Booby was the MVP. Like,
agreed.
If we're playing it down the middle. And yes, you're absolutely right. The Stars have more votes, so he's gonna go in. But in terms of performance, he was the best on the blue team. I thought that CT and Devin were both good. It seemed they were getting chances, although they didn't chances. CT didn't have chances. He was in goal. He played well, is my point. But they Yeah, I think Booby legit was the MVP, as disappointing as that is for me cheering for the champs. And, they would have easily gotten outvoted. So then we go back to see the man Miz, and it's a very straightforward deliberation where, well, at first I should say it's a straightforward deliberation, where Jose sort of starts to pop off.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
And arguing. And, like, I was amazed to see Salita getting mad. Like, Salita being like...
Like, doesn't that just tell you how annoying Jose is, though?
Yeah.
Right? That his own teammate that, obviously they need the numbers. They need the numbers on the star side, on the red team. And it still doesn't matter. They're still that annoyed that they're going to call out Jose for his just annoying, silly behavior. And the other thing, too, we were talking about how bad of a player Jose is, right? Like, he's a terrible game player, and his social game is so bad. But he had the opportunity to I would have deflected and been like, I would have tried to deflect it onto Shane.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of, like, what kind of team play is that? You're just screaming at me the entire time. It was tough to concentrate or focus. Like, that's where the obvious play was to shift your blame, not to Devin. That didn't make any sense at all. Then after he ran out of, I guess, ammo to defend himself, he just ended up nominating himself, which was kind of funny because the Miz was like, I didn't even ask for anything yet. Like, you didn't even vote. And they're like, it doesn't matter. We don't need to vote.
Yeah, I like that they're like, we're all going to vote for him anyway. Just let it happen, Miz.
This is so good. That was pretty
You make
good.
a good point. When he was trying to, like, deflect the blame onto Devin handled it perfectly, where he was like, no, I played fine. And then was quiet. Because Jose clearly had already turned the room against him. You have nothing to gain from, like, fighting back. Just be like, no, I was fine.
You let Jose bury himself at that point, right?
So,
I mean, that's what was going on at that point. They make the Jose's up there, and then we get to the blue team. They announce that Booby is their MVP, and Booby picks Wes. So Wes is going in. So we're thinking, hey, we got this matchup between Wes and Jose, and then dun dun dun. Here is another twist. The MVP now gets a power play, and the power play is you get a switch. And you get to sub out whoever the red team picked for any other player that you want. I would like to say here, John, first off, I found this interesting because it's another example this year of the much better job I think the producers, the production team as a whole have done with this season of Champs vs. Stars as opposed to last season. Just adding these little different twists, just adding these different things to ensure that the same thing that plagued last season, which was just a total domination by the champs, doesn't happen again. And I think they've added all these little twists and turns to give the power to the Stars, who might have some trouble kind of figuring out the game as they go along, even though they've done a good job of it this year, right? Thanks to Louise and Booby. They seem to have a tight-knit unit there that's making smart decisions. But you know what I mean? Just on the off chance that they were still struggling, we'll hear some of these power plays just to mix things up a little. What'd you think of that, John?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that if a champ had won MVP, I don't think they'd be getting a twist, or they wouldn't get such an impactful twist. Like when CT was MVP, his twist was that he got to give immunity to one of the female competitors the next week, which is not nearly as powerful as the switch or the trade.
Exactly.
And so I touched on this last week. I don't think Louise Hazel did like the best potential play, right? Like I said it last week, if I were in her shoes, I would have traded for one of the Stars, right? To make it even more balanced in my favor. So yeah, it's I think it didn't. The last week's trade did not even live up to its potential as a power move.
Exactly. And if not for Ashley blowing up, it would be a complete non-factor, just even from a viewer standpoint, too.
Yeah.
So totally right there, John. But I want to ask you, the decision that Booby, or I guess the Stars on the blue team had to make in terms of who do you choose to replace Jose, what were your thoughts there? What was the move to make? Is it what they did in terms of swapping him out for Devin? Or do you take the shot at CT?
You gotta take the shot at CT. As soon as they announced it, I was like, this is how, like, I mean, CT would probably beat Wes in most competitions, including the one that they did. Just because reach was so important, and I imagine that CT's arms are 5 feet long. But I think that you just use CT as a wrecking ball to just constantly take out any champ, right? Like unless CT wants to take a dive, which he wouldn't because he's raising money for his charity. You just keep picking people off with CT as best you can. So yeah, that's
interesting.
That's what I would do. And I mean, Devin was not a bad move. But, I think you got to put CT in there. And I should say, as soon as they explained what the twist was, you could see in CT's face that he's like, oh, this is going to be me. They're going to make me take out one of my best friends. Right? Like, all the other champs were kind of, like, making a, like, blah face. Whereas CT was just rolling his eyes and, like, tilting his head backwards because he was rolling his eyes so hard. He was just like, ugh. I know what this is.
So, as we mentioned, though, Booby ends up picking Devin and not CT. And, I mean, that's a very interesting play for sure. But his explanation, to me, kind of made sense. And it swayed my opinion because I was agreeing with you. And that was my thought going in. But it seems as if Booby was very interested in having Wes stay around because he might be able to use Wes later on for something. or even just the fact that you'd be losing a strong player from your team, and at this point it's more important for you to win challenges than it is for you to think about who you can beat in an elimination.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. The challenge, the actual elimination challenge, was okay. It was somewhat interesting, right? It was called, what was it called?
Poppin'
Did I write it
tags.
down somewhere? Poppin' tags. Basically, you have a bunch of tags attached to your body, and you have to reach around and try to rip off one of the tags from your opponent to score a point. And it was the first to three would win. And Devin versus Wes, I bet you as soon as people saw what the challenge was, they're like, oh, maybe it was good you didn't pick CT.
Why?
Right? Because I could just see CT like bodying Wes, right? Like Wes just not being able to move him, CT just like, ragdolling him essentially, which doesn't necessarily mean that he wins because, you still got to somewhat play defense and hide your tag so that it doesn't get popped. But yeah, to me, once I saw what the challenge was, I was like, this is good for Wes that he's not going against CT.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because going against CT, it'd be like trying to wrestle a tame bear. Like, I'm not sure I could get my arms around CT's chest to reach one of those tags. So, and to your point, if you try to, like, in one of the plays, Wes kind of did a jumping, grabbing move to get the tag off of, Devin's back. You couldn't do that with CT because, like, CT would just like grab you in midair and gently place you down, turn you around, and snap the tag off your back.
It's so funny though, like how differently things change, right? The margin of error, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it could be Wes against CT, and instead it's Wes versus Devin, right? And it's just funny how quickly that changes and how that one slight that one slight change changes literally the fate of your gameplay. And we crush Wes, or I don't think we crush Wes, but I think the overall view of Wes is that there's too much politics. But to me, that was a reason why, like, it justified Wes in the earlier scenes where we're seeing him talking to talking to Booby Gibson, and he's trying to figure out if there's a way that he doesn't go in. We see him after when he's trying to talk to it was Booby again and Drake, right? And he's trying to explain and get himself out of it. And I just think, as much as people might think that that's like a shady type move, which cool on some levels it might be, I think it is a huge part of the game because Wes knows, as good as his record is in eliminations, you still don't want to test fate. You don't want to go in there and you see the same people going in each and every year. Right?
Yeah. It's also, I mean, it's good that he's winning money for his charity, but it also moves him up the rankings in terms of making, like, it only puts a bigger target on your back. Like, they showed us the standings of who has won the most money so far, and Tony is number one. But that just puts a target on his back, right? Like, the next time it's a men's elimination, it'll be so easy for Louise Hazel and Drake and Booby to be like, well, Tony, you've won the most money. Time to go back in elimination. So you want to get off people's radar, and it's hard, right? Like, you get on everyone's radar. It's so hard to get off it without someone else freaking out. Like, you can't get off the radar unless you have, like, an Ashley going nuts or a Jose, like, speaking out of turn. But because obviously Ashley's a woman and Jose's on another team, Wes doesn't have that option of taking the heat off of him.
Yeah, totally agree. So without Wes being able to do that, he ends up in that elimination, popping tags, crazy. I mean, it went back and forth.
I liked it. I thought it was
a pretty good matchup.
It was, like, good visually, and I think that the competitions, these head-to-head matchups, are almost always at their best when it's two people who are friends but competitive. Like, no one took a dive in that competition, but because they like each other, it wasn't just like dirty and boring. Like, they were both putting in a sincere effort, and the result was that it was really exciting. And Wes ultimately won 3-2, but one of the ones that he won came down to like slow-mo instant replay, a split second. Right,
Yeah.
like he really just yanked the tag maybe a second earlier. So it was as close as can be. And I think it's in part because they like each other and they weren't going to take liberties with each other, but they're both competitive enough to give it their all. And it was entertaining. It was nice.
Agree with everything you just said. It was good to see Wes add to his domination in eliminations on this show. Yeah, and I think the blue team, or at least Booby, got what he wanted in terms of Wes coming back to their team, while also eliminating one of the stars from the other team. So I guess on some level, Booby got exactly what he wanted.
It was interesting to hear the stars on the blue team talk about how, as they were watching it, they almost regretted putting Wes in.
Yeah.
Louise Hazel in particular was like, we need Wes. Like, he's very good. And I was like, well, you know, maybe you shouldn't have nominated him. Like, maybe you should have focused on Tony. Like, if you're in Louise's shoes and you're trying to take out the champs on your team, why not just put Tony in? I know in an earlier episode they'd said, hey, we got to cut the head of the snake off, which is Wes. And we're already starting to see that. Like, there's a scene earlier where Wes kind of got into it with the blue team, and Tony's just sitting there, like, not... I mean, he's
laying low, man.
He's laying low, but, you know, you can see that Tony would fall into line if Wes gets eliminated. But it's also interesting to hear that in the elimination, they're kind of like, wait a second, we need this guy. Like, he's very good, and he's helped us win in the past. So... we should keep him around.
Yeah. I think so, too. I agree with you. I think, you know, it's a big move to keep Wes around, for sure, because his gameplay is just on another level, for sure. And as much as him and Louise have been kind of battling for power within their team, right? I think you're right. And on a certain level, they realize, okay, you know what? If we use our forces together, we can do some damage here.
Yeah.
Right? I think it works. In the blue team is a power. If you think about it, Wes is a good player. Booby's had a solid year. Louise is pretty good. Casper's been has been good at challenges. The blue team's a problem.
Casper is super athletic. Their problem is they just can't work together as a team.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But it seems like it could be coming. Could be close. Could be close.
So I have to ask you, Sheldon, who killed it for you this week?
Who killed it this week? I guess I just laid out why I think... why I think Booby killed it. He won MVP. He did his best Grant Fuhr impression.
What a reference.
Well, I guess actually it was I was going to say a bad Grant Fuhr impression, because Grant Fuhr was the king of winning those like 6-5, 7-5 games with those wheeling and dealing Oilers teams of the 80s, right? But you get the point. He had a great game in net, picked up the shutout, but also, just to piggyback off what I was saying earlier, it played out how he wanted it to play out, right? And I think a really telling scene was when Wes was trying to convince Drake and Booby that they should, hey, let's work together and let's try to flip it on Casper. It's time to make a big move right now. And Booby so calmly was like, wait a second, but if this was flipped around, you wouldn't do the same thing. I've watched you play.
Yeah.
Right? And that was like the first time I've heard one of the stars acknowledge the fact of, hey, I've watched episodes of you guys on the show before. I see how you play. I see how manipulative you can be. or in this instance, how good in the game you can be, right? And I'm not going to fall for it this time. We're in control of the game right now, so you need to fall in line with us. And obviously, I'm paraphrasing and making it sound a lot more cool. But you know what I mean? Like, it was a cool thing to see. Like, I was kind of caught off guard. I was like, whoa, okay, Boobie Gibson, he's down with the challenge. Like, he knows what's going on here. And he's not here for the play with Wes. Like, he's like, listen, Wes, you know? We know what you want us to do, but you're only doing this now. You're only suggesting that you work with us now because the power's in our hands.
Yeah.
So for all of those things, for the fact that, you know, he might have got ridiculed for not picking CT, but at the end of the day, I think he knows the bigger picture. It's better for him to have Wes, so he picked someone who he thought Wes could beat. All in all, Boobie, way to go.
I gotta say,
you're the real MVP.
I gotta say, picking these MVPs on Champs vs. Stars is way harder. Because a lot of the time we pick our MVPs at least based on part on their social game. Like if they hooked up with someone, if they're funny, and the stars.
It doesn't happen on
this. They don't, like, there's not a lot of, well, there's essentially no hookups on Champs vs. Stars. And, there's not the funny back and forth. Like, in the past, we've given these MVPs to people who are, like, really funny in confessionals. But people aren't as funny because it's sort of, like, it's more low-key. I mean, I wouldn't say that, like, Salida is particularly a budding wit or anything like that. So, you know, it is harder. I think I'm going to go with Ashley, though.
Oh.
Totally off the board, okay. I know. But, like...
That's allowed.
I think, you know, last episode closed with her just popping off. And, like, this episode continued with her going nuts. But her name stayed out of everyone's mouth. And I know that, obviously, is a men's competition this week, a men's elimination. But I don't think she's going to get nominated, like, next time out. Even though the stars are in complete control of Blue Team, I think that it's going to blow over for her. I think she's going to be fine. And I think it's going to be a classic Smashly where she, like, goes nuts and then settles down, like, and is totally fine. And it's especially funny on a season of Champs vs. Stars because what we're seeing is, like, every episode is essentially one day or maybe even half a day, right? So she went nuts 2 days ago, and what I'm saying is that, like, 2 days after she went nuts, it's all gonna, like, go away for her and dissipate. So I'm going to go with Ashley as killing it. And you know what? I have not always liked Ashley. I feel like I say this every episode, but I like her more and more. I know that, like, I like how she interviews with The Miz. I like it when she plays coy. I like it that she's, like, Camilla light, you know, now with less racism, where where she will go nuts, but, like, it's not as long or as drawn out or as embarrassing and awful as Camilla, right? And
no, I agree.
And she's also great in competitions. I mean, aside from the racism, one of the problems with Camilla is that she would go into Camillinator mode and it would just go on forever. Like, she would be angry for obviously hours, where Ashley gets mad and it's like half an hour, and then, like, someone cracks a joke and she's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, she's a tropical storm compared to Camilla's hurricane, and it makes for good TV, and it's not too annoying. So just shout out to Ashley in general.
I agree. Shout out to Ashley indeed.
So, I guess people, if they want to find us on social media to complain about my typing or anything else, or, you know, have comments or questions, They can find me on Twitter at jchidleyhill. And I'm not as good about checking Reddit as you, but jchidleyhill is also my handle on Reddit and on Instagram.
Yeah, shout out to the people on the Reddit page. Constantly, week after week, they are interacting and having discussions with, whatever we post in there in terms of whatever the question might be of that week. And, at some point, I guess we should read some of the comments, but we'll set aside some time. Maybe when one of the episodes of Champs vs. Stars is really slowed down, or maybe we'll start off next week by reading some of the comments, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think it's a thing. So people keep sending those comments to the Reddit page or to the Facebook page as well, because we do read it, we do see it, we love the interaction, and it's great too when people give us a take that we didn't think of or we haven't thought of, because even if it is Wes giving us something that we didn't think about, we're here for that. Here about learning. It's a community conversation.
It is a community conversation.
And you can get at me on Twitter at Shell Alexander or at Instagram at Sheldon Alexander.
Until next week, this was You Killed It.
You too.